As a long-time reader, I occasionally read a very good book, a lot that are good, a whole bunch that are just kind of and those books that you kind of wish you had picked up something else. But occasionally you find a standout, a book that rises above the very good to become outstanding and fantastic. Hello, and welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and in the month of June, I came across 3 outstanding books that are fantastic and that really do stand above the rest of most novels. I really liked them, and I will tell you about these 3 books. 2 of them are rereads, and 1 is a new discovery. I'm in a reading group known as the Summer of Steinbeck, or sometimes just Steinbeck is Awesome. It is a group that is going to be reading John Steinbeck novels over the summer. And one of the books that I read in June was The Grapes of Wrath, originally published in 1939. And this is such an amazing novel. When I read it the first time in the early aughts, I did recognize it as a truly fantastic book. But it is upon this reread that I really came much closer to the book and understand just how utterly good this book is. It really deserves to be considered one of the great American novels. On the surface, this is the story of the Joad family. They are living in Oklahoma during the dust era, the dust storm, the red clay that spreads over everything. They are desperately poor, and they've essentially been kicked off of their land by the banks because they can't afford to pay their mortgage. And then the Joad family sets off on a destination to find California, because California is the land of promise. They are migrants in their own country, and they're not appreciated for being migrants. They are treated so poorly. It is devastating to realize just how cruel some people can be to other people just because they don't have any money. There is very little kindness that is shown to the Joads. There is some here and there, but mostly I take away that the Joads are not wanted, not as they cross the country as migrants, not as they receive or get into the land that they're anticipating, California. And California treats them most harshly of all because they are there to be used and thrown away. They will get some work, but not a lot, and they won't be paid very well. And I just have to wonder if there's a lot of parallels between then and now. Then it was the Oklahoma migrants. They were called Okies. And nowadays, this hatred is thrown upon the immigrants, the undocumented immigrants especially. No one seems to want them, but these undocumented immigrants are just as human as the Joad family. And as you're reading this book, The Grapes of Wrath, you get to know the Joads. They are salt of the earth people. They are not greatly educated, but they are human beings. They have passions. They have loves. And you get to know them very well. A couple of other people have commented on the character of Ma Joad, of just how powerful of a character she is. There is a scene when they might have to split up, the Joad family, and Ma Joad puts her foot down and says, no, we are a family. We must stick together. And that is a very powerful scene. But in the end, this family starts slowly pulling apart. Not necessarily by reasons that they want to, but they have to. And this is what makes this story, so powerful. Steinbeck fully recreates the times that the Joads go through. I was fascinated. His chapters are interspersed. Some are about the Joad family. Some are about just what's going on in the United States. There is a chapter about tractors and about how tractors are pulling the people away from the earth. I thought it was a bit of an anti-technology rant. Some other people in the Steinbeck group did not agree with me, so you would have to read this book yourself and judge how you think tractors are affecting the earth. There is another chapter about banks, what banks are doing to families, how banks affect everything, how banks are soulless corporations that men must run without humanity. And when you pull these two sort of storylines together, you get one magnificent epic. I cannot recommend this book highly enough, and it ends on such a tragic scene. Another great novel that I reread this month, or I should say listened to on an audiobook, was Children of Time, published in 1915. This is a science fiction novel by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This novel has two plot points. In the first, you are introduced to Kearns. She is a human scientist. She is on a starship surrounding a terraformed exoplanet. Her idea is to take monkeys and a specially designed virus which will help evolve the monkeys into a second intelligent species. Unfortunately for Kearns, there is a splinter group on Earth who does not believe she should be fumbling around with species and trying to make them intelligent. They have some terrorists on her starship. They manage to destroy the starship and the monkeys, but not the virus. The virus escapes to the planet. Kearns herself survives, mostly as an AI in a computer. The rest of this plot point involves spiders. The spiders on this planet start evolving into an intelligent species, and each chapter is a different generation of spider. You are introduced to a spider named Portia, and throughout the other chapters, you are introduced to other spiders named Portia. This is actually a very clever plot device that allows the reader to latch on to a character even when it's not the same character. These Portias evolve. They create a greater and greater society. And they worship this thing in the sky, which is Kearns in her artificial intelligence satellite. The second plot point follows the journey of an interstellar ark containing cryogenically preserved humans as they seek out a new planet. Because the splinter group not only destroyed Kearns' starship, they basically destroyed the rest of civilization as well. The ark ship finds Kearns' world with the evolving spiders, but the AI Kearns tells the ark ship to go away, that they are not welcome on this planet, even though there are no other planets for humanity to go to. So this is where the plot really gets fascinating. As a reader, I'm rooting for the spiders, who I want to see evolve and grow, make their civilization on their own planet. But I'm also rooting for the colonists in their ark ship, who need a new home. And this planet, Kearns' world with the spiders, is really the only place they have to go. And then you have the AI Kearns, who is determined to keep the colonists off the planet. How will it resolve? The ending is a little trite, in my opinion, but don't let that dissuade you. This is a fascinating science fiction novel. One of the issues I have with some science fiction novels comes from the fact that some science fiction authors are not scientists. Arthur C. Clarke had a maxim that said, "A significantly advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." And many of these authors just write science as if it were magic. But Adrian Tchaikovsky does attempt to get his science right. I believe he has a degree in biology or something like that. So when he's talking about the evolution of spiders, he gets it a lot correct. Not necessarily all correct, because you are allowed to fudge just a little bit on the science in science fiction sometimes. But you get the feeling that his story could actually happen. His ark ship cannot travel faster than the speed of light, so their journey from the beginning takes over 2,500 years from the start of the story to the end of the story. Now, the characters are mostly in cryogenic sleep for most of the story, but that in itself is believable. The Children of Time has two sequels, The Children of Ruin and The Children of Memory. I have not read those two books yet, but I definitely are planning to read them this year. I can highly recommend Children of Time as one of the great, fantastic science fiction novels of the 21st century. Let me introduce you to this omnibus from the Library of America, The Western, 4 classic Westerns from the 40s and 50s. If you have not read a Western before, this is the book to pick up because it contains 4 really great books. I am a co-host for June on the Range. June on the Range is a reading event created by the great Michael K. Vaughan, which encourages people to read Western novels. I have read 3 out of the 4 books before this June, and on this June, I read the last of the series, The Searchers by Alan LeMay. I was expecting the book to be okay. I liked the other 3 books. They were all great, but for some reason, I thought The Searchers was just going to be okay. I was wrong. The Searchers was published in 1954. The setting is Texas shortly after the Civil War. The Edwards family has a ranch way out in the middle of nowhere. Really desolate and alone. They do have some neighbors. There were 2 families. One of the families got slaughtered by the Comanche Indians about 10 years ago. The Edwards family took in the only survivor of that massacre, Martin, and raised him as their own son. And the start of this book, he is about 16 years old, maybe 17, somewhere around there. And they notice that the Indians, the Comanches, have stolen some of their horses. So they go out on a ride to get their horses back. But the stealing of horses was just a diversion. The Comanches really wanted to slaughter the rest of the Edwards family, and they did so. And only a few of them survived. Martin Polly, who was the survivor of the first massacre, adopted by the Edwards, and Amos Edwards, the brother of the owner of the ranch. And when they get back and see that the family has been slaughtered, they notice that the youngest daughter, Debbie, is missing. And it is known that sometimes the Comanche Indians will adopt young children into their tribe. It then becomes a search of Martin and Amos to find the missing Debbie. This novel is stretched out over a number of years as they're following the leads and traveling from Texas to elsewhere in the West, just searching and searching. Amos is a seasoned veteran of Texas. He's a tough man. And between Martin and Amos, they must survive storms of nature and men and violence and Indians. But it is this story of these 2 men together, sacrificing everything to find this girl because of their guilt and their secrets. I was totally captivated with the story of Martin and Amos, their trials and tribulations as they survive storms, nature, men, Indians, all the trouble that you can imagine on the frontier of Texas. But it's a story of the 2 of them together, this bizarre friendship that grows between man and boy as they are driven to do something, to find the girl. And I think part of that is what made me really fascinated. What do you do when you need to absolutely do something and you think it will be a total failure, that you cannot succeed? Because everyone eventually comes to the conclusion that Debbie must be dead. But Martin and Amos refuse to believe. They are driven until they come to the end and the conclusion of this book. It is fascinating. As I said, I really was not expecting a great book. I was expecting something good because this is the Library of America and they do make very good selections in their omnibuses. But I was floored by how much I enjoyed this story. If you have not read a Western before, this collection, as I said, is a great place to start. I would start with either Shane, the story of a gunman coming to town, or The Searchers. As I said, I really loved The Searchers. The other two stories in this book, The Oxbow Incident, is probably something you want to pick up after you've read a Western or two. And the final book in this collection, Warlock, save that for the end because it's the most complex book in this collection. It is very dense, and it might put off some people, but Warlock in itself is worth reading. This whole collection, the Western from the Library of America, is worth buying and owning and reading every book. Well, okay, those are my 3 fantastic fictions for the month of June. I normally don't get to read 3 books of this caliber in 1 month, so I'm a bit surprised. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.